space background.
I'm sorry, I need to share it with you. So go
Uh,
ahead and introduce yourself to us.
well, thank you for that welcome. And yes, my name is Kristen Hogref Parnell, which is a mouthful, but I started writing under my maiden name and then got married. And so my last names have merged. Um, and my current books are actually published under my maiden name, and they are young adult fiction. So I have a contemporary series as well as a dystopian series. And then I'm writing some additional books as well. And I also teach English for high schoolers online. So I love young adults, and it's such a neat way to connect with them outside of the classroom.
That is so cool. Sorry, I was coming over here to make sure, and it was like already time to go. And here I'm like, okay, turn off the alerts. Come on. Um,
No, you're good.
Making sure I could touch base with you. So that's cool. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that dystopian series here in a little bit, but I didn't realize that it was like YA fiction, which is cool. I love young adult.
Mhm.
I mean, I've been getting back into middle grade novels recently, but I
Sure.
do a lot of kid lit here for sure. And I am an author of children's books, but I that doesn't mean I don't love all these other genres, right? I just don't write.
Right. And I tell people all the time, YA or young adult isn't just for young adults, it's also for young at heart. And so that's
I love
adults of
it.
all ages. So,
Definitely. That's all inclusive. I love that. I'm not a big fan of tag like in children's literature you typically do. I know there's parameters in all writing like,
mhm,
guided or suggested age, but I really
right.
dislike it with picture books. I just do because I don't want a 3-year-old and their mom to feel like they can't read my book, but I also don't want a 9-year-old to feel
Exactly.
like, oh, that my age isn't on the cover. So I always have beef with that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I
Oh,
definitely
pet peeve.
respect that because even age-wise, some young, like I just had an 11-year-old whose aunt reached out to me and she said, "Oh, she loves this book. She's only 11, but she reads way above her age range." So, that's so true.
Yes. I love it though, and that's good. It's good to hear that. So tell me why you write Christian fiction specifically. I find that
Mhm.
super intriguing. You're only the second Christian author I've had on my
Okay.
show this year, or in general. And the other woman, she's the No Regrets woman, Rhonda. That episode hasn't come out yet, but she writes
Okay.
more like self help. And so it'll be
Sure.
cool to compare like what you're doing with what she's done. And anyway, yeah, tell me a little bit more about that. Why you decided to write Christian fiction.
Sure, that's such a good question. Because a lot of Christian fiction or Christian writers also, or actually instead, focus on mainstream. And I decided to do Christian fiction first and foremost because I am a Christian, and that belief is so ingrained in who I am as a person. And I've been reading a lot about worldviews, and everyone has a system of beliefs or a worldview that they hold to that ultimately shines through their writing, whether they write for the general market or for the religious market. And so the key for me, though, is that I don't want to come across as forced or preachy. I think you probably heard that term with Christian writers, and for good reason, because there have been books I've read where I kind of groan. I'm like, oh, that wasn't natural. That wasn't a natural part of the story. But I just see so much opportunity for Christian fiction to give. This world's so hurting and broken, and it just presents such a great vehicle for presenting hope through, especially since I write suspenseful stories, it's a great way to show that hope in the midst of difficult circumstances. Or, if this character can be brave here, well, so can I in whatever I'm facing today. So, and I really think that's important for young adults because in today's culture, they're going through so many things, just whether it's just the natural adolescent growing curve or whether it's challenges faced by unforeseen circumstances like COVID, or how do you respond when things don't go your way or don't go planned? And so I just think that's a great opportunity to meet them right where they are.
That's excellent. I mean, I feel like that's much more needed than maybe even gets
Mhm.
vocalized. But
Sure.
meeting them where they are, and recognizing that there are a lot of youth that are trying to, in this process of self-identification, trying to figure out who they are and who
Right.
God is in relation to them. And I also am Christian, but it's just neat. I wouldn't say that it's shown up a ton in my writing yet, but I am
Hmm.
working on a self-help
Oh,
for
neat.
adults, excuse me, that
Okay.
I hope, I'm not sure when it will be published because I have perfectionism issues. And so
I think
it's
that's a
like
common writer tendency.
it's 13 chapters currently, and I'm on like the second or third draft, but I've been really pushing things with my kidlit.
Hmm.
And I'm always finding things, whether it be scriptures or books, that I want to put in to that. And so I kind of just feel like it's my permanent whip for now, my permanent work in
Sure.
progress. But I can relate to that. I really do want to help people find purpose and meaning, and it's specifically actually about finding happiness and joy. How do we do that
Oh,
in life?
so important.
Yeah, so it's
Yes.
kind of like a very broad topic, which is also why it's taking forever.
Right. Trying to find that narrowed focus.
Right, exactly. So tell me, what social media platforms are your favorite as a writer, and which ones do you find more challenging to use? I'm actually excited to hear your answer here because it's varied for me.
Yeah. Such a good question. So I am on several social media platforms. Facebook is kind of a given, although this year has been interesting with some migrations away from certain social media platforms, but I'm still on Facebook just because I feel like it's here to stay. We'll see. I could
Yeah,
be wrong. Um, so I'm on Facebook. I have both the personal and the author page, which has been something I know some writers don't do. They just use their personal page for all of their communications. But I found it's a nice boundary for me. And also, I'm not inundating all of my friends with writer news every day. If they want the writer news, they can find me on the writer page. So I kind of respect them and their friendship. Occasionally, I will post in both places, but that's been a nice, I guess, boundary for me and for them. And then I do Twitter as well. And Instagram is probably my favorite, especially because, again, my books are young adult. And I feel that young adults are more interested in Instagram and social media outlets that are more visual than text based. So, Facebook, I'm pretty sure I've seen the statistics, it's an older audience typically versus Instagram, Snapchat. Those are more younger audiences. Again, of course, there's exceptions. And then Pinterest is a one that I am still developing and really enjoying just because it's not your traditional social media because it's a search engine. So the beauty
right.
there is that your content doesn't expire in seconds like it does on Twitter. It remains relevant and searchable and links back to your website so people can constantly be finding your content. So Pinterest is becoming one of my favorites, but I know I still have a long way to go as far as learning it. And then as far as challenges, I'm glad you asked that. And I feel like the new challenge is that there are so many social media platforms popping up and I keep getting invited, join MeWe or join this one. And I'm still working on finding the solution there because I don't want to be everywhere because then I'll be stretched so thin. I don't know that I'll do anything very well. So I'm sticking to my four, my core four right now is what I call them, and maybe I'll experiment. We'll see. But I know like I did Parlor and then that went away, and now it's back. But I'm not willing to go back and have
Right.
it disappear again. So I'm really curious to watch these trends and see which ones stick around and which ones just kind of fade away.
Definitely. And I feel like that's part of the trade. That's part of the learning process. In um
Hmm.
yeah, I have a personal blog, but other than that, I'm pretty much the same as you. I have a different page for on Facebook. I have a personal page, and then I have like one that corresponds with my blog, which
Sure.
currently like has all kinds of things like kids lit tips for reading with
Hmm.
your kids, book lists, book roundups. But it will be more focused once my book comes out this fall. It will be a lot more channeled
Sure.
towards my books and yeah, my writing there.
Mhm.
But I think
And
that's
I like how you mentioned Yeah, I like how you mentioned your blog because I think that's the key for all writers, because that doesn't go away. That's one thing, we have the domain, people can consistently find us there. So I really, more than social media, even though I still try to participate, I'm really focusing on my website, my newsletter, which goes out once a month, where people can consistently hear from me and they don't have to worry about it disappearing. So I think for writers, that's something I love that you said you're building that for your book because that's a consistent way that people can find you.
definitely, I like that sense of permanency, if that's even really a word. And think,
Illusion of permanency, anyway.
yes, it's just nice because, like you say, in a time when like everything is fast paced and technology based, a lot of it
Hmm.
is temporary, and so you've really got to like
Yes.
know your stuff for sure. So have you been doing your own marketing too?
Yes, and I'm sure now you said you've published Kidlit and you're working on a few new projects.
Yeah.
Okay, so and I think I heard in a previous episode that you are going like the hybrid route with your
Yes. On
publishing.
this
Okay.
first children's book. That's correct.
Okay, awesome. So I can Yes, as far as marketing, the answer is yes. And I think it's true regardless of how you publish. So, my very first young adult series, I self published because I was breaking into writing. I didn't know a soul. You query, you get the
Ah,
rejection letters, you're not sure what to do. So, I
you
did
know
go
you
the
have
self
a
pub.
message to share, so you still went
Yes.
out there to do it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that was my troubleshoot. Those are my troubleshooting years. I learned what to do, what not to do, a lot of what not to do. But through that process, it gave me a great respect for publishing, seeing each step of the journey. And so then when I signed with a traditional publisher, it was such a relief to know that I've got somebody helping me now, but even so, the marketing doesn't stop. The marketing on
Right.
my end doesn't slow down. So, yes, as far as marketing, I am definitely boots on the ground, trying to find creative ways to find where my audience is and find what meets their needs.
I think that's really important. And the key is where's your audience? Like wherever your main concentration of audience is. And maybe split. I feel like I have
Sure.
more family members on Facebook, but I have a lot of family and friends on Instagram too. And Twitter,
Right.
it depends. I feel like my husband's on Twitter for stocks, my dad for sports. So it just depends on what people are there for, you know?
Absolutely. And you never know where it's going to cross over.
Mm-mm. So tell me a little bit more about your dystopian trilogy. That sounds very fascinating. And I don't remember if I'd read it on Podmatch, but is it written like during our time right now, our 20th century, contemporary? What's the theme there?
Sure. Yes. And dystopian, I know, isn't a term that is in everyone's back pocket. So, for
Right.
anyone who's not familiar, that just refers to a futuristic setting, typically where culture, society has broken down. The government is typically dictatorial, or, it's not just, even if it, has the illusion of justice. And so, for my dystopian trilogy, it's actually set in the year 2149, so futuristic.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And yeah, definitely futuristic. And it's actually set in what used to be the United States of America. People have kind of lost context or touch with what their heritage was, and they no longer have, due to some natural disasters, they no longer have the technology. They don't have the conveniences that we had. They don't know what their history is, and so in that context is where my heroine comes in. And she is, her goal is not to save the world. That's not her initial goal. She just wants to rescue her brother who has been exiled into what I call a satellite, but it's basically like a concentration camp. And
Oh,
she just wants to bring him back. Um, and she thinks the only way to do that is to get into the ruling elite and be able to revise the codex or the law the right way, and she thinks it's very possible. But when she gets there, she realizes that it's not possible, and that her brother isn't necessarily the only one who needs who needs saving. And so it's very much a redemptive story for herself, where she not only is trying to rescue her family, but ultimately gets in a position where she can make a difference. And then what does she choose to do with that? So,
Wow.
yeah, it has
That
a
sounds
lot of
incredible.
historical context.
But it's dystopian. Yeah, I'm not super familiar. I haven't read a lot of dystopian books in general, but I know of them.
Sure.
I don't really know if Divergent was meant to be dystopian or not. Maybe. Okay.
Yes, Divergent,
But
Hunger Games,
yeah.
Maze Runner.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Maze Runner. That was a good one too. But your book sounds fascinating. So it's a trilogy, you said,
Yes.
right? Okay. Have all the books come out now?
Yes, they all are released, and then the prequel I actually wrote afterwards, but that's the free novella that I offer on my website. So if people are like, I don't even know if I'd like dystopian, or I don't know if this is for me, they can get the free prequel right on my website.
Very cool. And I'll have you share that at the end when we kind of talk about where people can follow along with you and all that good stuff so that they can, so
Awesome.
it's all kind of put together, is what I meant. Okay.
Sure.
So, out of curiosity, and this is just something I have to ask to all of us are responding to COVID and the pandemic in different
Mhm.
ways. How have
Yes.
you responded to hosting either literary events or promotions since COVID hit? Has it been challenging for you? What kind of things have you been doing?
Yeah, great question. And I do feel like 2020, I mean, none of us knew what to expect there, how long it would last, how it would impact publishing, and just the podcasts I've listened to, just even the fascinating information on how it's delayed publishing. And so many authors have had to, that I know had to, relaunch their books later. But for me personally, I did.
Oh, sorry, Kristen, you broke up. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
You want to
can
sorry,
you still hear me?
I can hear you now. It broke up for a few seconds. So let's go back. Oh yeah, it says my internet connection is unstable. Well, of course. Uh,
No worries.
let me see here. Oh, sorry, Kristen, you broke up. Okay. So let's go back so you know what the last thing was you said.
I appreciate that.
Personally, I did. Yeah, that was weird. It just completely cut out. But for me personally, I did. You didn't even get to finish your sentence.
Okay.
So I'm sorry about that. So I'm glad that I caught it just because there have been times that I
Yes.
haven't, and then I feel bad because I just have to cut that segment. So start wherever you want. That's what we have editing for, right? I still
Yeah. Okay.
edit
Great.
these videos for my YouTube channel, but I haven't even gotten that up and running yet. So I will, but so I can share my space filter.
One thing at a time.
Yes. Okay. So just wherever you're comfortable starting from that point. Um,
Sure. So, yes, as far as how COVID affected me, I was fortunate, I guess, in a sense, not to have a book come out in 2020. So I wasn't scrambling to reinvent how to market in a non face to face kind of environment. But I did still want to remain active and connected with my readers. So one fun thing I did was I actually connected with a small a school, and they reached out to me, and their English class just was like, "Can we ask you what it's like to be an author?" And so I had all of these 8th graders asking me questions. What does it mean to write? How did you write? How did you start? How old were you? They ask all the detailed questions that you have to stop and do math for. When did you start writing? What inspired you? And it was just such a neat conversation because they were all in front of their laptops and taking turns sharing questions. And I was just able to encourage them, as well as, if writing's a passion of yours, go for it. Be persistent, follow through. And to those, I recognized some in the class could care less about writing. I said, whatever it is that your passion is, even if it's not writing, don't give up on it. So it was a neat opportunity to encourage them, even those who wouldn't consider themselves writers. So that was a really neat opportunity. And then I actually was able to go to 2 conferences in the fall. And that was a huge blessing, just to get like FaceTime with other authors and connect and network. So I consider myself really blessed. I know that wasn't a possibility for a lot of people, but I also discovered podcasts and just became a huge fan of listening in to half a dozen or more on a weekly basis and just staying informed that way.
Yeah, that's been really important, I think. And it's interesting. I ran a poll on my Instagram the other day about whether people reach for podcasts or audiobooks when they want to be educated. Because these days, I and my husband and I have been talking about it. I've always loved audiobooks, but a
Hmm.
lot of times, depending on the household task or how long of a shower I'm going to run, I
Right.
feel like those bite-sized educational lessons are just so much more approachable in podcast form because I listen to a lot of books. I still do. I love Audible, but sometimes they're 13 or 15-hour books. And it depends on
Yes.
the book and if I'm going to take notes on it. But sometimes, like, it's not that I don't want to take notes in a podcast, but it's a little easier when it's smaller, when it's kind of that bite size
I
education.
agree with that.
So yeah, I think podcasts and any kind of conferences, virtual, whatever you can do,
Hmm.
have been super valuable during this time. I need to find some myself, but I'm also a mom of two, and they are my main job.
Yes. Oh, of course.
Right. So they
And
keep.
I love that. And that, like you said, the beauty of podcasting, you can just kind of scroll through, the ones you've saved or favorited and pick, oh, this sounds interesting today. I don't want to listen to that. And I agree. It's bite-sized information. So thank you for being a podcaster and, making that available to, like you said, young moms like yourself who maybe couldn't travel at this point.
Yeah, I hope, and I just hope at any point with all the different people that have come on the show, that
Hmm.
especially with the interviews, that we're providing information for people to go out there and do whatever they've been dreaming of, or
Yes.
to find your work and really connect with you, or whatever it may be. But just like, of course, my passion and my main focus here 100% is literacy. So
Yes.
if we're accomplishing that, I'm super satisfied.
Hmm.
So in general, what message have you wanted to convey? And it could be different with, each set of books or each book, but what
Sure.
message have you wanted to convey to your readers?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think at its core, it would be search for truth. What is truth? Where do you find truth? How can you pursue truth? And second to that would also be hope, finding hope maybe in places that seem absolutely hopeless. Where does your hope come from? Those are core questions I want to send my readers searching for. I don't want to give them the answers. I want to help them find it. And that's, again, why fiction is so beautiful because it presents truth in a non confrontational way where the reader, along with the character, embarks on a journey. And along the way, they might learn something about themselves. And so that's why I love fiction.
That's true. I love that books in general, I've said this before on my show, but I mean, if people get sick of saying it or hearing it, I'm sorry, but I love that books say what sometimes we cannot. And whether that be
Hmm.
finding books that address a certain topic or guide us to a
Right.
certain finding, whatever it might be, like that is the beauty of literature right there, is being able to find something. I mean, you literally sometimes all you have to do is get on your library website or on Amazon, and
Hmm.
whatever topic you're curious about, you're going to find something. And then if you just need articles, Google's great. It's a great search.
Right.
So there's so many things out there you can read and learn. But this is going to kind of lead into the next question, but we've kind of talked about the hard parts of publishing and writing, or maybe not as much publishing. We'll get to that because you self-publish too. But what
Sure.
what in general do you feel is the hardest part of writing, and what advice would you give to prospective authors, people who want to write books?
Hmm. So, two parts to that for sure. The hardest part of writing is the discipline of it. I was telling, as an English teacher, I also host a writing club with my students, and I'm constantly telling them, if you only wrote when you felt like writing, you would probably never write because it's a discipline like anything else, and you have to practice it. And so, for young writers, I think that's probably the biggest challenge. Are you going to be disciplined enough to sit down and write even when you don't feel like it, or even when the inspiration is not there. I think for people who have been in the writing journey a little longer, the challenge is not so much the writing, but the marketing, because that really becomes a huge portion of, especially if you're not just writing a memoir for your family. Like if you want to write something that's going to reach people, you've got to figure out how to do that. And so I think regardless of how you published, traditional, hybrid, self-published, that marketing element is probably going to be where you're going to have to get really creative.
I agree. It just, no matter how you're publishing, marketing's just, it's a non-negotiable, really, in the
Mhm.
market now. And I love that you give your students that advice, because about writing being a discipline, just because it is. And
Yes.
even though I love writing, I'm so crazy
Mhm.
about writing. There are some days that I do not feel like writing. And I'm not talking like I have journals. I have journals for everything. I'm going to post about that this week, but I have
Oh, neat.
like a gratitude journal and a motherhood journal and a normal what's going on in my life journal and
Mhm.
a happy journal. I really like that one. I just started that to help me
Oh,
write my other book. It just has
sure.
prompts, to like suggest finding happiness in every day. But even with those and my start today journal with my goals,
Mhm.
I will write in those, but then I don't work on my books every day. Now, again, I am a mom, I've got other things going on,
Of course.
very,
Full-time job right there.
very important things going on with my kiddos. But yeah, I would say that it is such a disciplined art that I will especially try to carve out time in the morning before the kids are up, and I'm a night owl,
Mm,
so more often than not, it's when everyone's gone to bed, including my husband.
sure.
And it's funny because I have a desk. This is where I podcast, but I very rarely write here. And that's because I often write in bed or on the couch. I also am like a messy, organized desk over here, which you can't see since I'm in space. But
No.
I've hidden that. But I love having like clumps and stacks of each book or each project that I'm working on, because I'm already working
Mhm.
on another kid's book and starting to get the query letter for that, going. But yeah, you
Sure.
kind of have to have like concentrated chunks and be disciplined
Mhm.
that, okay, I'm going to sit down, even if it's for 30 minutes and then no more, 9 to 9:30, and I'm going to write
Right.
X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to get it done. I don't care if I have a migraine or my favorite show is on or a friend wants to get together or, talk or whatever, because I'm not in high school, but I'm just trying to think of all the excuses,
Right.
that you could.
Yes. I need to clean the house. That's the one that gets me. If I don't want to write, I'm like, "Oh, the house needs to be cleaned. I should clean the house."
Right. And it's hard. Exactly. Like that's not a bad thing. It's hard because you really have to decide, okay, there's good, better, and best. What is the best use
Mhm.
of my time right now? It would look better if I cleaned my house, but the best use of my time is if I take this time to write right now, then I'm
Yes.
covered. But if I just put it off, then I don't know when I'm going to come up with that time. And so I still need to
Exactly.
like write it in my planner. I've heard like hardcore people do that. I don't schedule every hour of the day unless it's appointments and things. But sometimes I do. I
Mhm.
just need to remind myself this time to this time is writing time. It's sacred writing time. Just go for it. So I like that. Writing.
It's like you give yourself permission. Yeah, this is my time. I've blocked it out. I've reserved it. So important, especially, young people. And I know young people are involved in lots of activities and school and events, but they have to realize that's just preparation for adulthood, because those things don't go away. They just double exponentially.
You got to learn how to balance it all at some point. So
Yes.
well, and a lot of careers, do actually deal not just with literacy, but with writing specifically. Like you need
Mhm.
writing in a lot of careers, and so it's something you need to develop. But for those of us that enjoy writing, needs to be
Right.
like a discipline to sit down and write time. I love that. So, is there anything else you want to share with our audience today? Anything that's on your mind, connected to your work? In a minute, I'll have you share where people can follow along with you. But anything else you wanted to share today?
Well, thank you for that again. And I think the one piece of exciting news, not related to my young adult fiction, which I do still plan to write some more. I have some works in progress. As you, like you were saying, you've always got multiple projects you're juggling. And I love that you said that because as writers, they are in different stages. There might be an editing, there might be a rough draft. So that's very true here. But I did just sign with Mountain Brook Inc. for a new women's fiction romantic suspense series.
Cool.
And so
Yeah.
that's for the moms who are listening because I primarily have written for the young adult reader, but I've also just felt a desire to write for the adult reader as well. And so that way I really am writing fiction for the family. So I'm excited about that opportunity. It's not going to release until late 2022, which seems like a really long time, but I know it's going to be here. I'm going to blink and it's going to be here. So that's one piece of exciting news just
That's
for
very
the adult
exciting.
reader. Yeah.
And
And then yes,
I like that you're kind of like you said, you're writing and eventually you're going to be touching the whole family in a way. So that's neat. Not very many writers can say that just because a lot of us pick a niche and kind of stick with it, you
which
know.
is probably simpler, but I just have so many ideas.
Yeah.
You're right.
No, that's really cool. Congrats.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so that's a piece of exciting news. But yeah, in the meantime, like I said earlier, I do have my newsletter. So that's an easy sign up on the bottom of my website. And again, readers can get that free dystopian novella to see if dystopian is something they enjoy. And it doesn't matter if they're young adult or older, like we are, or even older. I have adult readers tell me all the time they love my books. And I'm like, oh, I wrote it for, teenagers. So I'm glad to hear you like it too.
Yeah. So tell me that website.
Okay, so it's a mouthful. It's Kristen Hogref Parnell.com. And I sent you the link so that you could include
Oh,
it in the show notes.
you did.
Yes, because
Oh,
it's not a name like Smith or Jones. It's
no,
you kind of have to guess at the spelling. Even Kristen, you can spell that at least four ways. So
true. So yes, I will include that in today's show notes. And then you mentioned Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, whatever you're into or whatever you're comfortable with sharing. Go ahead and tell me that too, and I'll write it down.
sure, yes, all four of those. And do you want me to send you the links for those for the show notes?
Sure.
Because again, it's my name primarily. So Kristen Hogref Parnell. I know I had to abbreviate, I think, on Instagram. So I think it's K Hogref Parnell, author on Instagram.
And it's
But
Hogref.
it's a variation of my name.
Okay. Is it Hogref with F or TH?
F.
F.
F is in Frank. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Yeah. So yes, I know. We just kind of had to do like the variations of our names. Basically, I'm sad about this, but I'm going to have to change my Instagram name soon since I need it to reflect more that I'm a writer and author than just that I
Mm,
support promote early literacy, which I do and I still will.
sure.
But my editor and publisher both kind of suggested that to me, and so like I've literally had like 4 or 5 suggestions on my mind. But I'm like, why is like but rebranding it's a big issue. I don't know why.
It
It's just hard.
is. It
Yeah.
is hard. And I relate to that because I had to rebrand. And at first I wasn't even sure I would if I just keep my maiden name. And then I decided, no, I want to use both. And I had to rebrand all of my social media,
Mhm.
change all the website, have one website direct to the next. So I sympathize with you, but it is possible. It's just a piece of work.
Yeah. Well, and I want people to know who I am for sure.
Hmm.
Katie is a super common name. Anything related to lit, if you have lit in the name. So right now it's Katie S. Lit, like Katie's Lit, but my last name is also Story, so S. But
Which is so neat. I
yes,
love that.
use that right as a writer.
I
So
think you definitely should use that.
I'm working with that. So we'll see what I come up with. But thank you so much for your time today, Kristen, and just for sharing your inspiration and writing tips with For the Love of Literacy. We're so glad you came and I look forward to reading your dystopian novella and then getting a taste of your work and looking at your other work too. So thanks again for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Katie. It's my pleasure.
Okay, have a nice evening and we'll be in touch. So
Sounds great.
thank
Thank you.
you. Bye.
Bye.